Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of Dialogue Horizon. In this episode, we will cover the recent events which occurred last week, which was the summit of the Arab League in Algeria. Maybe if we have time, we'll discuss other matters, but primarily, the episode will focus on the Arab League summit, which was held in Algeria, 2nd and 3rd of November, 2-3 days ago. That's why we are happy to host in this episode one of our political activists, and he's a scholar and he's a professor, associate professor in universities, and he played an important role in the current events before and after the revolution. Dr. Samani Hanoun. We are very happy to have you in this episode with us to discuss this important issue of the outcome of the Arab League Summit, which held its meeting and deliberations in Algeria last week. Welcome.
Thanks, Engineer Abu Haras, and thanks to Dialogue Horizons. And I'm happy to join this exceptional episode at the Dialogue Horizon to focus on Arab League Summit that took place in Algiers during the 1st and 2nd of November. Hopefully, discussion will be fruitful and create value added to the viewers around the world.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's start by the first issue. It's an important issue which Sudan can play a very important role on it. The Arab League, the Arab Summit, they focus about the coming crisis of scarcity of food and the need for more production in food. And Sudan is considered one of the countries, one of the few countries which can bridge the gap between the shortage of the supply and demand of the food to the growing population of the globe. This is an important issue. So when General Al-Burhan, in his address to the summit, he mentioned this, and they presented a proposal for utilizing or how to make use of Sudan as the bread basket. As we used to say, long time ago, that Sudan is the bread basket of the world. So now in his speech, he's trying to revive this idea of Sudan is the bread basket of the globe.
Yeah.
And he said they presented, and the Secretary General of the Arab League recommended the proposal, and he spoke about Sudan can play an important role in this area. Do you think that Sudan, in its current and present unpredicted situation in the future, can Sudan meet the challenges imposed by the summit of the world, the Arab League? Is Sudan in a position to fulfill the proposal of bridging some of the gap, narrowing the gap?
Well, I think this is a central question. To what extent Sudan is eligible to fill the gap of food security in the Arab world? Sudan currently passes through very tight economic conditions and political crisis. I think the current climate in Sudan and the current environment in Sudan is not conducive enough to satisfy this slogan, and it is difficult to couple word with action. For very long history, we used to hear every time that Sudan is the bread basket of the world, and again, bread basket of the Arab world, and alike. But unfortunately, up to date, we are facing inside Sudan serious food gap. So this will remain at least a theoretical slogan. It is difficult to be implemented in the real life. The food security, as among the range of agenda discussed in the Arab League Summit, represent one of the most important agenda, because currently the world population faces a dramatic drop in food because of increasing number of population in the world, and especially in the Arab world. To fill the demand for food is not an easy mission. Definitely, the President Burhan mentioned that we are ready to fill the gap, but I think you need a sequence of reform inside Sudan in order to satisfy this slogan, and at least to make a structural reform to combat corruption in the government. And also, you need to create appealing investment act in order to attract foreign direct investment or investment from Arab world to Sudan. You need to reform the current regulations in Sudan. You need to stop corruption among the different government level. You need to take many steps in order to be qualified to fill the gap in the Arab world. I think it is not an easy job. It involves wide range of efforts, and you need to take range of policies by government in order to fulfill the gap of food in the Arab world. Definitely there is a strong demand for food in the Arab world.
But Dr. Samani, this takes me directly to the question of definitely when they say it's not the Sudanese who said Sudan is the breadbasket of the world. This long time ago, since independence, 76 years or even more, it was stated by the British maybe, but it's not the Sudanese. Definitely, it was not baseless. It was based on something, as we all know, it was based on the chances, the resources. Till this moment, still Sudan has the resources. So what exactly went wrong since independence? In colonization, big projects were done, big projects, like Jadira scheme. It's something colossal, something huge, big. But after colonization till today, what crippled Sudan to be the breadbasket of they still have the land, they still have the water, they have the experience, and they have the skill. What is the reason?
I think one of the problem, the Sudanese, they don't have the mind, the problem of Sudanese mind.
Sudanese or the regimes?
The different regimes, I think. Let us be more specific. The government, the national government in Sudan, for very long history back demonstrates that the minds of leaders fail to get a maximum exploitations of these huge resources in Sudan. This is why Sudan classified and ranked one of the poorest nations in the world, because of failure, because of corruption, because of integrated vision to get use of these resources for interest of the people. The leaders for several times demonstrated several times to fail in order to get use of these huge resources for interest even for the local people. And this is actually what today makes Sudan one of the very poor nations among the world, and people living in very tight economic condition because of failure, because of lack of common vision for the economy, of lack of roadmap as for national project that all Sudanese people involved in order to save a strategic national goal. For package of reasons, Sudan failed to get use of the abundant resources in agriculture, in service, in industry. Different resources stand idle, up to date. And even we again repeat the same slogan and repeat the same quotation that Sudan is the breadbasket of the world, still we need to couple word with action. Unless we make a pragmatic approach in order to get use of these resources, this will remain useless or valueless. Because for many history backs, all the nation know that Sudan is a breadbasket of world, and this is inherited from the colonial power, and up to the national government, we failed to get use of these resources. So the only way now, again, we have to think about the future. and we have to draw a roadmap for how to get maximum use of the abundant resources in Sudan, especially in agriculture, how we are going to exploit these agricultural resources to fill the gap for the foods in the Arab world and the world as well. There is a strong demand for food today in the world. So what we can do in order to make use of abundant agricultural resources in Sudan? We need to make strategies, we need to develop the regulations, we need to develop the manpower, or the humankind himself is not qualified enough to do the job. We need to also make the Essex,
okay,
which is destroyed dramatically during the collapse regime.
that is good. Okay, okay, I agree with you. But don't you think that the erratic turbulence since independence in the governance, it was never consistent?
Yes.
Few years of democratic system, parliamentary system, followed by long military rule. Again, as the cycle is became a vicious cycle. Don't you think that this is one of the reasons, or the main reason, why Sudan is still Sudan is the breadbasket, has the potential to be the breadbasket of the world, but still the conditions are not conducive.
Because of this political instability in Sudan, sometimes ruled by short civil system, and sometimes by long military coup, that resulted in political instability in the country, and also resulted in what we describe it as a zero-sum position. Sometimes Sudan ruled by the leftists during early 70s. Again, they moved to the extreme, ruled by rightists in early 80. That makes zero because they cancel each other. And rightists against leftists, this position of extremists in Sudan. Sudan is a moderate society but controlled by extremists. And this is one of the dilemma. The two extremists, whether in the right or the left, always they capture power. And that is what will make the positions which is difficult to understand, because the community and Sudanese people are moderate peoples, are hospitable people, but they controlled by extremists in the government. So that resulted in this very unique position.
So from this is a direct from what you said. The direct answer to my question is that because my question ended by, can Sudan meet the challenges and the pledges of General Burhan in front of the Arab Summit? So you are saying under the present prevailing conditions, which will be protracted as far as we can see for some time, few years. So Sudan cannot meet the challenges of being the breadbasket or bridging any gap of the food shortage in the globe.
It is difficult.
It is difficult. So do you think it is difficult?
Yes, I think it is difficult.
It is just something we call it a wishful thinking.
Yeah, unless we take the corrective steps we have mentioned. You have to revise the regulations.
But this takes time.
Yeah, you have to revise the ethics of the people. Where is the ethics? Where is the manners? The people, they lack manners. How you are going to implement in a project? The first thing, you have to build the Sudanese people, the peoples. You have to build the minds. And you have to also develop the values of community, which dramatically dropped during the falls.
This takes me to what you said, takes me direct to the second question, which is related to this.
Let me just explain this. As we mentioned several times, that if we were planning to make any development or hope in the community, there are three principles. We have the first things, you have to build the manners among the people. And number two, you have to build the educations among the people. And number three, we have to work hard, round the clock. These three principles are must for any hope or development. Three pillars.
Pillars. Okay, that's very good. Okay,
so for President Burhan, if you are planning to fill the gap, he has to follow the path of the three principles.
He has to build the pillars first.
The three pillars first.
Okay. But you know, that's why he coupled this. After he made this pledge of that Sudan will be the breadbasket of the globe, of the Arab world, and we can do something in the gap, the shortage of food. So Sudan is highly qualified to do that. But he said instead to the Arab Summit that now they are trying to build confidence, and they are trying between the warring factions of the country. And he talked about the Juba Agreement in 2020, in which the Arab League maybe they did not play a role or were not invited to play a role in the
Peace.
in the peace agreement. So the Arab League was far only the African Union, the IGAD, and the mechanism, tripartite mechanism of the United Nations and IGAD and the African Union.
Yeah, Troika.
So this, what is your comment on this request from Burhan, from the Arab League, to enhance and to help in his endeavors to make Sudan back coherent and solve the problems after the Juba? Bearing in mind that it did not appear in the final statement of the no mention about this. They did not mention this.
Yeah, needless to repeat the weak role played by Arab League in the peace process in Juba that is signed during the last years, and the very poor role played by Arab League in that special national agenda for Sudanese people. So I think the President al-Burhan invited the Arab League, especially Secretary General and the cabinet, to join the peace process in Sudan, to back the positions of peace, and at least also to finance part of the peace requirements, because you need the international community suspend any assistance or financial assistance to the peace in Sudan. So he would like just to attract part of the support to the peace process and finance by the countries of the Arab League, especially GCC. Countries, they can support the finance of the peace. So backing peace process by Arab League is important for success of the peace initiative in Sudan. And as you know, the security arrangement involve a lot of money and finance. So President al-Burhan would like to support the peace process by the Arab League members who can play a considerable role in sustaining peace in war-affected areas, especially in Blue Nile, in Nuba Mountains, in Darfur, in the east. In different parts of countries, the government needs financial assistance in order to implement the peace agreement, and peace agreement now encounter practical challenge to exist once the international community stop funding and finance to the peace process. So I think by all means the President al-Burhan would like to attract the support of the Arab League countries, that especially in finance to the peace process, in order to sustain the peace and to avoid any drawbacks in peace in country.
And also he mentioned also in this context, he mentioned something which seems to me it is something a little bit weird, because it's till now it did not get any consensus among people. He spoke about his effort and his support, full support to the tripartite mechanism, which is the United Nations, IGAD, and Troika. So the United Nations mission is headed by Volker. Volker. So he said he is supporting the efforts and encouraging the efforts so that they can come to a consensus which will lead to formation of a technocrat government of nationalists, non-partisan ministers and prime minister, to take the rest of the transitional period to wait to the other shore of elections. But at the same time, he's saying that in Sudan there are slogans and rallies and demonstrations against Volker and against the presence of Volker himself, and even General Burhan, he himself once he threatened that, or he warned that he might expel Volker. So how can you read this? His support to the tripartite mechanism, at the same time opposition is growing against the tripartite mechanism.
To some extent, I think now there are some counter movement to the foreign interference in the local discourse. And some demonstrations in Khartoum street protest against heavy involvement of foreigners in national discourse. And sometimes people describe this protest as part of the collapse regime activities in order to recover the collapse system in Sudan. So I think by all means the effort exerted by international community to create what describe it as full consensus, this is impossible, like mission impossible. It cannot be realized 100%. In politics or in practice, we cannot make 100% consensus because people have different views, people they have different ideologies. We cannot make full consensus. This is, I think, one of impractical slogan raised during the last period. But we can just work for majority of people. This is more practical. We can just ensure that majority of people support the new government. But we cannot talk about full consensus in Sudan. Even in liberal democratic countries, we cannot realize this very difficult end that make full consensus of all people. It is impossible.
Against democracy.
Yeah, this is against the democratic principle. The democratic principle emphasizes the majority. It doesn't mention the consensus.
Yeah.
So you have to design your roadmap according to the democratic principles. You just acquire the majority that are eligible to set the government and to sustain the government.
And give room for opposition. And give
but
room for
full,
give room for opposition. Majority to rule, the majority rules, and the other, which is
so
complementary.
I think we spent a lot of time. My advice is the best thing we have to go to election. I don't agree with the people that election will bring about the old regime. Never, because Sudanese people now are aware enough with the practice of the old system, and if the international community keen enough, we have to move into presidential system and to go into election. This is, I think, the most practical way to solve this dilemma. Otherwise, we can involve in the vicious circle.
Waste time.
Yeah, and waste a lot of time, and this is a time-consuming process. It takes time.
Okay, okay, that's very good. Okay, let us go back to the, because I think there's a lot of words now being talking critical about the Arab League organization, which was established on 1945, and Sudan joined after independence 1956, and Sudan played a very important role since the formation, since Sudan joined the Arab League. He played a very important role in the different wars of for 1948, the Swiss War, 1958, 56, and 1973. All these, and also played a very important historic role in bridging the gap between the two, King Faisal and President Abdel Nasser. Both of them died late on 1967 after the war, the defeat of the Arabs by the Israeli in 1967, the 5-day war. Sudan played a very important role, especially late Mohammed Ahmed Mahjoub, the prime minister at that time, and Ashari was the chairman of the council, the Sovereign Council. But Mahjoub, in his house, he held a meeting, joint meeting between the two presidents, King Faisal and Abdel Nasser, and he managed to resolve. And also at that time, Sudan raised the slogan of the 3 no's. No negotiation, no recognition, no. The three no's. So Sudan played a very important role. Yet, when it came to Sudan itself in trouble in Juba agreement, the Arab League, why, I don't know why, but they did not play a role. Maybe they are not invited. Actually, they were not involved. But Burhan, in his call speech, he called for the help of the Arab League with this. But his call was not included in the final communique. maybe the Arab, because they know the reason. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, I
Why?
think one of most important agenda mentioned among the agenda of the summit, the reform of the Arab League. And I think strongly we recommend reform of the Arab League. Because let us examine the history of the Arab League in Sudan. Sudan played considerable role in the development of Arab League since incorporation by President Abdel Nasser in 1964 and up to date. Sudan played exceptional role to support the Arab League. And I think this is why the gains of Sudan are humbles and normals against the losses of Sudan to involve in Arab League. If you make cost-benefit analysis for the position of Sudan in Arab League, you will find Sudan sacrifice a lot of things in order to get normal gains from this regional grouping. So if you make fair evaluation for the long relation, since incorporation up to date, you will find the gains of Sudan are very normal. And this is explicitly expressed by President al-Burhan when he urged and asked the Arab League to involve in Juba peace agreement, because their role is very humble in Juba agreement, although some countries they supported the negotiation like Qatar and Emirates.
But they were not invited. Nobody invited them.
Yeah,
Juba.
they supported individually. So
the Arab League did not.
Arab League as an organization not involved actively in the peace. So this is the question why? Because Sudan historically played very important role in the peace process, in the especially in the Arab League. After the Arab-Israeli war in 1967, and also the reconcile of dispute between the king and President Abdel Nasser in Khartoum. The Khartoum described it as a land of the three no's, and they played a very important role in the Arab League. Why they don't involve in peace process in Sudan? This is one questions you need to be revised. So the last agenda in summit about the reform of Arab League. Yes, I do agree that we are in bad need to reform the Arab League in order to suit the requirement of the air, the requirements of the current life in the world. Now we need to build regional grouping based in economics, based on the bilateral relation between nations. Any regional grouping based on origin or ethnicity will not serve the interest. So we need to make new manifesto for the Arab League that in order to include the interest of all people on geographical basis, on economic basis, rather than ethnicity. So reform is a must. Because if you flash back, you go to the history of the Arab League, you can easily discover that Abdel Nasser, one of the main founders of the Arab League, make very clear statement about combating imperialism, stopping advancement of imperialism to the Arab world. This is one of the principles of the Arab League. And number thing, the Palestinian case, the Palestinian-Israeli war. So these are two principles. To what extent the Arab League succeed to solve or to address these two principles? Now, the Arab League controlled by imperialism.
Imperialism.
Fully, yes, control under imperialism. And the second thing, the Palestinian Israeli is still going on. They failed to solve the problem. So by all means, the Arab League failed to satisfy the basic goals. Okay. Reform is important for Arab League.
For us to
be more geographical and economic manifesto to create a new regional grouping based on economics, on geographical.
Okay, Professor Samani Hanoun, the summit, the Arab League summit, the recent Arab summit in Algeria, it was held under the slogan of "Get together."
Yeah.
People, they want to unite. Let us be united, yes. Get together. Yes. Because of the Arabs are now in a disarray. They are not. Yeah. They are not in good terms with each other. Yeah. So Burhan in his statement also on behalf of Sudan, he mentioned that also this the unity or the reunion between the Arabs is threatened by the growing cases of terrorist groups,
Yeah.
political terrorist groups,
Yes, yeah.
and human trafficking
Yes.
and smuggling, but certain criminal groups
Yeah.
are working hard in the Arab area. That is, they are adding to the differences between the Arab. First, what do you think? What is the reason for the flourishing of terrorism grouping started from the Middle East, from the Arab areas, and trafficking comes through Arab. What is the reason for this?
I
What is the
think, yeah, this
why?
is, I think, you see, one of the agenda, the Russia-Ukrainian war. And I think based on that assumption, people expecting something new, that the world will be reshaped according to the current war in the world. And this is actually war between the two world polars. So now they expect something that the unipolar system in the world will remove to new biopolar system in the world because of war currently headed by Russia, and also the heavy competition by China in the international discourse. A new world orders will be reshaped again, and this is why they need to unite because they suffer from the policies of divide and rule that extended for a couple of decades back. Now the Arab world, they need again to unite in order to make a new roadmap for the future, because now the futures of the world is passing through very tight conditions. They mentioned the Russia-Ukrainian war, that what happened, the manifestations of this war on the international order, what happened. So you need to make a new roadmap for the futures, and also within this framework you need to consider the position of the Palestinians. They make the case of the Palestinians in the Arab world. So I think that about 8 agenda or more mentioned and discussed in this summit are drawing the roadmap for future, which way we can take in order to go in the future. So the Arab, they have to, first step, they need to unite. But the questions, how they can unite people with the different ideologies, with the different backgrounds and cultural backgrounds. So on what basis you are going to unite the people? You need to make manifesto in order to unite the people, like what happened during the President Abdul Nasser. He raised to stop develop or advancement of imperialism to the Arab world. Against what we are going to unite? The people they would like to understand. So I think this is still slogans. In order to transfer this is into practical program, you need to describe and make manifesto for what do you think about the futures? What's your proposal and your manifesto in order to be either in favor or against? So people, you need to address them and to make a new manifesto for the unity. People, so what way they are going? They are going to take the way of the Russians, or to take the pro-socialist or capitalist, or you are going to make a new paradigm, your own paradigm. So you have to make description to the futures, and also make roadmap and new manifesto that either to be supported by people or people will stand against it.
Okay, that's exactly why some of the members of the Arab League in this summit and before that summit, they started talking about sending messages about the importance of restructuring of the Arab League, and also redrafting a charter. And even the charter, its charter, it has to be radically changed so that it can include other like the grouping of the European markets, like the COMESA, like all. So maybe the Arab League is something unique because it is the only grouping of countries based
Ethical.
on
Yeah.
ethnicity,
Ethnicity, yeah.
Arabs.
Yeah.
That's why it is not recognized by the United Nations, by any, even the FIFA Football Association is
Yeah.
not recognizing it,
Yeah.
that because it is based on.
Yeah.
But it can be diluted by forming
Yeah.
the common markets,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I
which will
think.
include other areas.
Yeah, we can take the learn lesson from regional grouping in the world. You start from ASEAN up to NAFTA in North America, passing through European Union and also COMESA in Africa. We have different example of regional grouping in the world. We can learn lesson from the how to build the regional grouping in the world, like European Union. This is a full
Based mainly
integration.
on economy, economy.
On, yes, even in the political discourse, you can create political regional integration that include many countries, not on the basis of ethnicity or on the ethnic dimension, but on the economic and political dimensions. That is first things you should know, how the total GDP in the regional grouping and how the total populations of the new market. So grouping will be on the basis of the economics, on basis of political discourse rather than ethnicity. This is what we strongly recommend, that the Arab League should make immediate manifesto that and transfer into regional grouping based on geographical zone, based on economic interest, based on the political interest of the nations. And the most important, they have to focus on the GDP of the region, and also to focus on total population and the demand for food, for service and products in these markets, and also freedom of capital, freedom of people, democracy in the region. These are very important, but continuing the positions in the Arab League by the same manifesto that was incorporated during Abdul Nasser is now, I think it is not inappropriate for the current position. You need to revise. You need to make new manifesto. You need to make a reform for the main principles of the Arab League in order to meet the requirement of the air, or to meet the requirement of the regional grouping today in the world. Best example can be learned from different parts of world, starting from NAFTA in North America up to ASEAN in Southeast Asia. You can learn the lessons.
This is very important. That's one of the reasons that the crippling the Arab League in different aspects,
Yeah.
and which requires the complete modification or renewal of the charter itself, because the charter, the Arab is lacking this area of the economy.
Yeah.
Likewise, in the crisis, the problem, the conflict in the Arab world, the Arab League does not have any mechanism which can intervene, like security, small security council, like the African Union. They have the commission, and they have the means to get involved by any means to address the conflicts in different parts of the Africa.
Yeah.
Arabs should have also included some mechanism like this, some small grouping, so that can intervene even by trying to broker deals, not necessarily by involvement militarily, but even this is not
economic power.
even this is not in the charter of the Arab League.
Yeah.
So you are right. The Arab League has to modify it to include this
Yeah.
activity, and the other, the commercial and the relation between the countries.
What is very important, that most of the members, they consider it, the Arab League considered only by Egypt. And Egypt presents sponsorship for the activities of the Arab League. This is why some members withdraw from the league, like GCC countries. They create their own councils for the GCC.
The Gulf,
the Gulf Council.
Gulf
And
Council.
also you have the Moroccos on the west of Africa. You find different components, they withdraw from the Arab
They
League.
started to make their own,
to make their own identity and grouping, their own grouping.
which covered both aspects: the economy, the trade, security.
Yeah, security, and give
Because they
also
did not find it in the Arab League.
in the Arab League. Arab League lacks many things, so you need to reform. Not just to talk about the history, but you have to make a roadmap for the future. Arab League lacks most of the principles today in the world that heavily rely on economics and that heavily rely on the political unity among, like what happened in African Union. So they have to create mechanism, as you mentioned, in order to make interference in
Yes,
case of
this will help.
democracy,
Give-
how to protect democracy. Most of their principles now outdated, are not cope with the current life in the world. So
Maybe-
they need to revise the manifesto.
Maybe, to what do you attribute the absence of 9 heads of states of the Arab League in the Algeria last week, Algeria summit? This
Yeah,
is
that
an
expresses
indication,
a position that
indication that the most important people, they did not attend.
yeah, people were disappointing with the results, and even people they anticipated what they say at the end of the declaration, because people fed from the repeated declarations.
Repeated, the
yeah,
same, the
without
same.
actions. So even leaders were disappointed, and this is why we don't attend even the summit. They just make a lower representation to join summit. So generally, I think reform program should be number one before the Palestinian case, because you need to make a new roadmap for Arab League. Arab League in the position, the historical position, will never meet the requirements of the current era. You need to make total reform for the Arab League. You make total relax to the principles, and you make a new manifesto for future in order to widen the scope of work and activity of the Arab League in the region. And most important, we advise them to learn lessons from regional grouping in the world. Learn the lessons from NAFTA and go up to the ASEAN in South East Asia. From there you can learn through Africa, COMESA. From there you can learn the lessons, how to create successful grouping of the Arab world that support the food security and even support the political securities in the region. So you can make a new manifesto with advancement to get advantage from the current regional grouping in the world. But the Arab League in the position, the old position, will not suit or satisfy the requirement of the air today.
So it's a must.
Yeah.
That because the absence of these people, the important is an indication that they are fed up of the repeated rhetoric and repeated final conclusions and declarations, communicate.
Yeah.
So the absence. So this should lead the Arab and the Arabs to rethink
Yes.
in different directions, like what you said in the area.
Yeah. This is one negative indicator. You can use it in order to predict what will happen in the future. That increasing number of the absence of leader is a signal that one day you will find nobody.
One day you will find nobody.
Yeah.
Will come only ministers.
Yeah, only ministers. So I think before the tragedy, you have to take some corrective step. From this, you have to make a reform in the main manifesto of the Arab League, because it was outdated, and now you need to update the manifesto, make new principles that meet the requirements of the
Like
nation.
what? Like, for example,
Yeah, you first
forming
of all,
bodies,
talk
different-
about the democracy.
democracy.
Democracy in the Arab world. You talk about the economy rather than.
No, I mean the restructuring. When you talk about restructuring, means the bodies.
Yes.
Like, for example, the Arab, the United Nations and the African Union, the European Union, they have a council.
Yeah,
they have a general
you
council.
have to
They have
create the
security
similar,
council.
yes, similar institution.
So you
like
are
African
talking
Union.
about similar.
Yes, similar institution. I want to advise them to learn from the lesson of the regional grouping in the world. That means to borrow the experience of this regional grouping in the world. In economics, in politics, in social life, they have to make a new manifesto. Because the manifesto of the Arab League heavily rely on the combating imperialism in Arab world, fighting or supporting Palestinian case. These are two principles. If you examine them, you'll find that Arab League failed to realize the two goals. So why it exists?
Because it's not included in the charter.
Yeah, you have to think about a new way, because in the current position, if you continue in the same path, you will get a big zero at the end of the day, and the leaders will keep absent from the summit, like what happened today. Finally, you will end with no leaders in this body. So the only advice is, in order to make flourishing to the league and to make new look, you have to develop new manifesto. That manifesto rely on the current experience of regional grouping in the world. You ignore ethnicity, you have to rely on economics, on political integration, and also you have to make mechanism for, like what happened in African Union, for security, how you are going to control security in the Arab world. So copy the same experience of the regional grouping worldwide. I think this is the best way to reform the Arab League today.
So do you think that is very important, very essential that the Arab League, it cannot continue like this?
Yeah.
Otherwise, every time,
Yes.
every meeting,
Yeah,
the number
declining,
of decreases,
declining rate of absence, yeah.
Because the lack of mechanism, and bearing in mind that, Dr. Sammani,
Yeah.
the Arab countries, these Arab 23 or 22 Arab countries, if you get the aggregate of the wealth of these countries, is one of the biggest in the world.
Yeah.
Wealth, I mean, in kind, in money,
Yeah.
in oil,
Yes, yes.
and even in Sudan. Sudan has
Yeah,
wealth.
yeah, yeah.
The resources which will bridge the gap between the. So Sudan is equally important to the,
Yeah.
if they get the correct environment
Yes.
and the correct governance since independence,
Yeah.
that could have been rich than the Gulf countries because of the oil, not only oil.
Yeah, so I
that-
think there is one very important
Yes.
point. The advancement of the global system today that will erode the role of these regional groupings. The advancement of globalization, advancement of interconnected global village, advancement of ICT revolution in the world, advancement of the internationalizations of life. This will erode the regional grouping. This small grouping or be totally disappear because of advancement of the global
advanced
trade.
communication,
Yeah, advanced world going transfer into global village.
global
So
village.
the
It did
local
actually, now
entity-
it is a global village.
Yeah, it is a global village. So finally, that will destroy these local regional entities like Arab League, like small entities or continental entities will be destroyed in favor of the global village. People, they move by the power of information. They live in a very small village in the world.
Yes.
So that is actually one of the manifestations of globalization today. Globalization is something that when it is local event, shaped by event happening many miles away, it is globalization. So now most of the event, whether economics or politics or culture or social life or in different dimensions of life are controlled by global power. So advancement of globalization will erode and destroy these
The
local
regional-
entities.
yes.
So this is why leaders
Unless they qualify themselves
Yeah.
and protect themselves by pragmatic and practical
Yeah,
bodies.
yes. You need a smart way, anyway.
Yes.
You need a smart thinking
Smart
in
thinking.
order to get maximum benefit from the advancement of globalization and also to minimize the negative impact on local communities. Because this is like tsunami movement, the global movement.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the introduction of Boko Haram cars to Sudan cannot be stopped because this is a global trend. They are falling barriers to trade and investment. They are destroying borders. They're giving freedom to the people to move across national borders.
Yes.
No single government can stop influx of cars and movement of capital and movement of people around the world. So unless you take some precautionary strategies, very smart strategies, you will be totally disappeared. Definitely.
You will be out of
Will
the,
be out of the global village.
for example, let me tell you, because of the global village, now after 3 weeks
Yeah.
from now,
Yeah.
the world, billions of people will be watching at the same time
Yeah.
the opening of the World Cup in Doha.
In Doha, yeah.
For the first time in the history of FIFA,
Yes.
the festival, the Mondial is held in an Arab country,
Yeah.
and in Doha.
Yes.
Doha did quite a big job,
Job, yeah.
fantastic job.
Yeah, yeah.
People, they say that this is the best,
Yeah.
the best preparations,
Yes.
and the best stadia
Yes, yeah.
in the globe now.
Yeah.
This will be watched at one time
Time,
by
yeah.
by
By all the
billions,
nations
by
in
all
the
the
world.
the globe. That's why
Yeah.
it is a country.
Yeah, that's why we moved to the global village.
So the Arab League should
Arab League should revise the manifesto in order to meet the requirements of the global village.
Otherwise,
Otherwise, we'll be disappeared. Not the leaders, but the whole organization will disappear. This is actually very
very interesting, very interesting. Yes, yes. So you agree with those who are calling
for reform.
For reform. These countries, big countries, are calling for reform.
Yeah, definitely.
And they are attributing the absence of 9 heads of state to this because it is something repetitive and something
My advice is, Engineer Abu Haras, to them, let us start with the organization that give priority to the economics. Economics unite the nation, while political agenda make people divide the people. So let us transfer the organization into economic organization.
Yes.
Give more freedom, because you know this is one of the core competence of the Arab world. They have power in economics. So if they make a manifesto for economics, I think this will be more practical and will make very powerful organization rather than this current Arab League in Egypt.
Okay, thank you very much. So you are saying, to sum up, you are saying that the best thing the Arab League should think hardly and should be pragmatic and should keep pace with what is going in the global, the globe. They have to keep pace, otherwise they will be bypassed by the events, by many events, and it will wither and will die. Thank you, Dr. Sammani Hanoun, Associate Professor, for being with us in this very interesting episode about the Arab League and the call for the reform or restructuring, which is very important to keep pace with what is happening in the globe. The speed by which what by the happening is far more than the crippled bodies of the Arab League. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us in the last hour or so. We hope to see you next week in different issue of Dialogue Horizon. Bye.